You are watching TGZ TV. You are watching TGZ TV.
Global Zambian, the only magazine that celebrates quality, cross-culture lifestyle and entertainment.
Hello, and good evening. We're back literally 24 hours later. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm
like
good. I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Not too bad. I'm glad that it is Friday. So at least, you know, after a very, very, very busy week, we're getting a chance to basically just have a bit of rest, you know. And obviously today, you know, for our avid viewers today, we're not discussing Divorce Club because we did that yesterday. If you missed that, you can go over onto the channel and actually find that live where we discuss the season finale of Divorce Club. Today though, we are discussing something not entirely brand new, but it is part of our programming, and we are discussing Netflix Passing. Passing is basically a it's a Netflix movie that kind of touches on, you know, colorism. So basically what the synopsis basically says is that Irene Redfield, who is played by Tessa Thompson, a refined upper-class 1920s woman, finds breezy refuge from a hot summer day in the grand tea room of New York City's Drayton Hotel. Across the room, she spots a blonde woman staring her down. And so what this basically explains is that obviously she sees this blonde woman is staring her down and she's not sure why, you know, who is this person, you know, why is she staring at me? And obviously because she is sitting there in the beginning, you're not sure entirely what's actually going on. And so in order to kind of give people an idea of the movie, and for those who are looking to watch it, first of all, we want to warn you, spoilers, okay? This is a spoiler review. So please, if you haven't watched it and you do not like spoilers, this is your time to switch off and then come back later and watch the review that we're about to make, because it will be containing a lot. Okay, as you can see, it's a very calm trailer, isn't it?
Very quiet movie.
Yeah, very quiet, very calm. And I think I kind of like the way they've kind of done that, because it kind of allows you to stop and think about what's actually happening in front of you, you know, because that's what it did to me. Like every now and then I kept on stopping, like, wait, what? And sometimes I would rewind a little bit because I'm like, whoa, is this what's actually going on? So it's one of those that's very it's understated, it's not over the top, it's not in your face, you know what I mean? It's not one of those that tries to pound any message in your face, but you can still be able to fully see what message it is that it's trying to give to you. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of like how it is. So in our review, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the movie, the production value, the quality, the acting, and then we're going to delve into the message that is behind the movie, which is to covers obviously colorism, racism, and then what impact it has in today's society. So Nana, you've watched it. What were your initial thoughts? When you started watching it, what were your initial thoughts? Did you think you were going to enjoy it? Or?
Firstly, my initial thought was, I'm not sure if they pass as looking like white people. That was my initial thought. Like, how are they passing? Like, it's really not adding up for me. So I feel like I love the acting. Nothing against the acting, but I feel like we do have some actresses that actually you're so confused. Like, are they white? Are they black? You know what I mean? Somebody like Meghan Markle, to a certain extent, like, I was shocked to find out she was actually black. You know what I mean? So
mixed race.
Mixed race. I was a bit confused with that. I was a bit confused with that, but I loved everything about it. I loved how calm it. Sorry.
You all right?
How calm? Yeah, I'm okay.
What was that?
Something was trying to climb. Something was trying to climb all over me. Some bag or something.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So like, I love how calm it is, and you just get lost in the emotion. That's what it's about. Like, it's really about reading the emotion, and there was a lot of unspoken feelings that I wish would explode more, but I guess that was the essence of the whole movie. Like, they leave you to conclude and all these things. So I really, really liked it. Yeah. I loved it.
For me, obviously, when I initially saw that it was black and white, in as much as I'm a bit of an oxymoron, I enjoy black and white movies, but at the same time, I'm one of those, I have to be in the right mood for them. And so because of that, I was like, oh gosh, black and white, I don't know if I really want to, black and white. But then when I read about it, I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, as in passing for white? How? And so I was like, okay, let's see how this culminates in terms of like when it starts, how it kind of like goes from stage to stage and how they're able to actually pass as white, And so initially I thought they were actually black women. They were actually mixed race black women, both of them, And so when in the beginning scenes, when Tessa Thompson, who plays Claire, Claire is her character, right?
Not Irene?
Irene, actually. Claire is Ruth Negga. Ruth Negga is the one that plays Claire. Tessa Thompson plays Irene. And so when Tessa Thompson is going into I think it's a toy shop or something, and she is helping the ladies with the little car when they dropped something. They're like, oh, what a kind lady, So I'm looking at that and I could see she had the hat on and she's not trying to show her face fully, if you notice, just kind of like almost like bowing down, trying to cover her face. So I was a little bit confused in the beginning there. I was thinking, okay, what error is this? Because I'm not very good at judging the errors. I'm really weird like that. Like, there's certain errors I'm like, oh, that must be this year, but I was not sure what error it was. So I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, is this the error if she's mixed race or black and she's in a place where clearly there's lots of white people, clearly there's integration. That's what I thought, but at the same time, so when she was banging her head, I thought it was just her because there's loads of white people around her. She didn't want to make too much noise, and it's only when she went to the place where she was having, the tea house, where she went and sat down, that I noticed that everyone around her was kind of white. And then obviously, like the synopsis has said, the lady was staring down at her and she's like, I know you. And then she realized, hang on a minute, I know her and she's passing as white. And that's when I realized that Tessa Thompson herself was also passing herself as white for the day. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And looking at the dynamics like of the two women, right? I'm gonna bring up an image of them. Hang on, let me see if I can find. Do I have an image of them together? Because I was trying to see if I can find an image. Okay, I don't have an image of them like together, but we've got the side by side. I'm gonna put it on top of us right now. You can see side by side, Tessa Thompson has got more prominently Afrocentric features in the sense that her cheekbones, even her lips are fuller, even her nose. Obviously, you can't see her face in front, but even her nose is kind of like more prominent, more Afrocentric, Whereas Claire, played by Ruth Negga, has got more, slender features, which are the features basically found, in Caucasian people as opposed to Negroids, And so because of that, I was like, oh, so how is she, I get Ruth Negga's character, Claire, being able to get away with passing for white, but how is she able to get away with it? And they're looking at her and not noticing fuller lips and not noticing a wider nose, that sort of thing. But then I realized her doing this all the time is probably what she uses as a shield. Okay.
Yeah.
And so obviously upon that encounter, Claire is really excited to see Irene, and she invites her over into their suite where they start talking, and you can tell that Irene is a little bit nervous, like, oh my gosh, what is actually happening? Because I think she was still a little bit of shock, like, oh my gosh, is this actually real? She's really passing as white, and her husband is actually white, and they even have a child, and I was like, what? That is messed up. And then obviously shortly after they sit down for a little bit, the husband actually arrives. And it is when the husband arrives that it starts to get a little bit interesting. Yep. I'm going to play a clip. It's basically audio with subtitles, and you just hear an image on top, obviously for copyright reasons. But this helps paint the narrative of how the whole story kind of like, culminates later in the movie. Have a look.
Do you hear what John called me, Irene?
Oh, Claire, please.
No, go on. Tell her why.
Oh, it's silly. But when we were first married, this woman was as white as a lily. But as the years go by, she seems to be getting darker and darker. So I told her, if you don't look out, you'll wake up one morning and find that you've turned into a nigger. She's been nigger ever since.
No, that's good. My goodness, John. After all these years, what would it matter if you found out that I was 1 or 2% colored,
Well, you can turn as black as you please as far as I'm concerned. I know you're not colored.
So you dislike Negroes, Mr. Bellew?
No, not at all. I hate them. But not as much as Nick does, for all she's trying to turn into one. She won't have them near her, not even as a maid. Isn't that true?
Have you ever known any Negroes?
No. But I do know people who know them. And I read about them in the papers, of course. It's a terrible mess. Robbing, killing. It's sad, really.
John, Irene doesn't want to hear about your pet perversions.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bore you, Mrs. Redfield. You live nearby?
So it's a little bit painful to watch, like when you watch it, wow. And she's there, obviously being passed off as white because she doesn't want to reveal she's actually black or mixed race. And this man is expressing how much he not just dislikes Negroes, but hates them. Doesn't want to be around them. He said about the crime, and he is basically describing his wife, saying, oh my gosh, one day I woke up and she was a little bit darker, and she's been getting darker and darker, and she's becoming the N-word, basically, Next thing, she's going to find herself turning to an N-word, and he even created his own nickname for it. I was like, wow. And for me, I'm just looking at this woman, I'm thinking, you've decided to pass for white, and this guy despises half of who you are. Like, if ever he finds out, how would you deal with that? Like, I was gobsmacked. Honestly, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I don't know what was going through your mind, Nana, when that happened.
First of all, it was a very awkward scene.
Yeah.
It was really, really awkward. One thing I noticed was Irene's awkward laugh, which got a little bit out of hand there. Like, yeah.
Became
But
hysterical.
then I couldn't imagine being Claire, and because I'm a proud person in who I am and whatever I do. Obviously, that was a different time, but just watching this person describe who you are, part of who you are, and you pretending like, how is this a life that you want? Like, I didn't get it. Like, how would you be comfortable? Because you're not yourself. This person doesn't love the root, doesn't even know you. You know what I mean? So it kind of felt, and you could tell later on in the later scenes how comfortable she was hanging with Irene and them
Other
and all
black
that.
folk.
Yeah,
Right.
like why wouldn't you just do this? What's wrong with
Right.
doing this?
Right.
So yeah, for me it was very, very uncomfortable. I can't imagine being Irene there. I would have popped off like 2 seconds into that.
I would have been like, excuse
really?
me,
Let
I
me
am
take my
black.
wig off.
I'll take let me show you who I am. But I think it would have been a situation where, because of this is the 1920s we're talking about.
Yeah.
The places like, even if Jim Crow law was still, was no longer around, in places like the South. I mean, technically they were in New York, which was a little bit more cosmopolitan, but still, black people kept to themselves. I think there was still major segregation between the races. And so I think her being in a place where it's predominantly white people around, there's a chance that they would have kicked her out, probably got her arrested, possibly even got her killed,
Yeah.
So she had to maintain the pretenses and laugh it off, because that was the opposite of her being absolutely fuming, which is what we ended up seeing later on, where Claire is there sending Irene letters, and Irene is not responding to the letters. And the husband decides to read one of the letters, and she's saying, I'm so lonely. And the interesting thing is, Claire has immersed herself into this role as a white woman to the point where she actually behaves like one. She actually behaves like one. So she's like, I'm so lonely, this and the other. And she literally in the letter almost gaslights her to say, ever since I saw your wild nature, that wildness in me comes up after I saw you. It's like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, so because you've been around someone that's more ethnic than you, the wildness of you that's when it ignites it. That's crazy. And that's when initially, if you saw, the husband was saying, oh, give her a try, until he read that line. He was like, okay, don't give her the time of day, until she forced herself at their house. Yeah. Until she forced herself at their house and then ended up going there.
That's interesting that she said that, because of the two, you would think Claire is more of the wild one and this one is reserved. So how is she bringing out your wild? Which wild side is she bringing out? Yeah, exactly.
Right. She's the calm one.
So what do you mean?
Respects herself, and you can tell even. Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
Yes. So I'm just basically saying, what do you mean? What wild side are you referring to in this context? Because you're the wild one. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
And something that people need to note about the coupling is, you've got Claire and her husband. He's a white man. She is a very light-skinned, super pale, mixed race woman who easily passes for white with blonde hair. And then you've got Irene, on the other hand, who has got more prominent Negroid features and dark hair, right? Even if her hair is still silky, they've both got silky hair. She's got darker hair, but she's married to a black man, and they are living very similar lifestyles, in the sense that you can see they are from the upper echelon of the black community. They host parties, they've got a big house, you know what I mean? They've got a car, which is something that was very rare. Like, if you look at some of the movies, and I kind of like that, because we did get to see an affluent part of black people way back then. And something that people need to also realize is, I don't know if people know the story of what they call Black Wall Street, which was actually burnt down. And, it has been said that it got burnt down out of basically not wanting black people to succeed. The Black Wall Street was better than the Wall Street that we see today. You know, that's how rich and that's how wealthy Black people became, just by supporting each other and buying from each other, you know. And this showing us that, being in the 1920s, bearing in mind Black Wall Street was burnt down in 1921, right? You know, it kind of mirrors that. And I was like, this is interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this is how affluent Black people were. They would hold their own get-togethers, their own soirees, pretty much the same image that's been rammed down our necks, right, for generations, for decades, on television, to show that the only people who hold massive soirees where everyone is drinking expensive champagne and wearing expensive outfits has always been the image we've always been put in front of us, has always been the image of a white person being the only one that can actually be able to pull off something like that and be able to have all these grand, amazing parties, be able to live in beautiful neighborhoods, be able to drive amazing cars, be able to actually speak well, and, you know, be well educated. I mean, her husband was a doctor, you know, and so that's the kind of, you know, affluent lifestyle that they had. So it was not much different from Claire. The only difference is Claire was passing as white, hence maybe having that white privilege to be in certain areas and go wherever she liked, you know, without having to need to explain to herself, to explain to people that she belongs there or she's got the money to be there. Whereas Irene had to actually disguise herself as white to actually go and just have a nice cup of tea somewhere or buy certain toys for her kids, you know. So I think that's the kind of slight different. But in terms of wealth, I think it seems that they kind of lived very similar lifestyles in that sense. And so the next clip is a clip where there is a discussion. This time by now, Claire has kind of weaned her way into Irene's life and she's being invited over. So when they have all these different soirees where some white people do attend, you know, Claire is actually invited and she is enjoying herself. She's having a good time. But what I love about this particular scene, and it's in two parts, is the discussion that happens between Irene and Hugh, you know, played by Bill Camp. They have a very interesting discussion about what white people think about Black people and certain tones of Black people and that sort of thing. Here is what transpired.
Poor man, rich man, beggar man, thief. How's the rest of it go?
Doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, all here and a few more. What I'm trying to find out is the history and status of the blonde beauty out of the fairy tale that you've brought along. One currently seen dancing with your husband.
She's a girl from Chicago I used to know. She's very excited I know you.
Good of her, I'm sure. Can you spot my wayward wife in the throng? Yes. The usual problem. All these gentlemen of color have driven a mere Nordic out of our lives. Have I laid eyes on her tonight, except in spots here and there being twirled about by some Ethiopian? I have not.
Well, sir, you have to admit that the average colored man is a better dancer than the average white. That is, the celebrities who find their way up here are fair specimens of your sort.
Having not tripped the light fantastic with any of the males, I'm hardly in a position to argue the point.
Okay, so that's the first part of the discussion, where basically they're just talking about, you know, the different types of people who are there, and he's asking some questions about, you know, he's mentioned something like, oh, looking for his wife, isn't it? He mentioned something about his wife, you know, being enticed by some kind of Ethiopian, and how there's kind of a level of exoticism, I suppose, you know, that's in it. And so following up to that discussion, a little bit more happens, and then this discussion happens literally a few minutes later. Where is it?
And are always raving on about the good looks of some Negro, especially an unusually dark one, like Ralph Hazelton there. Dozens of women have declared him fantastically handsome. What do you think? Is he?
No, and I don't think anyone else would either. It's just plain exoticism. An interest in what's different. Kind of emotional excitement. Something you feel in the presence of something strange, and even perhaps a bit repugnant to you.
And there you have it. So, you subscribe to the notion that Our motives for coming up here are predatory?
No. More curious, I should say.
Like your princess from Chicago. What is that supposed to mean?
Things aren't always what they seem, Hugh.
Okay, so as you can see, Hugh, who is good friends, with Irene, they've got a really good friendship. And he also is under the impression that Claire is in fact white. Majority of the people there are under the impression that Claire is white, and Irene doesn't disclose her secret. She doesn't actually reveal to people that Claire is in fact a mixed race woman passing as white. And in her passing and attending these soirees where there's a whole bunch of Black people, something she has not had access to for a really long time. And by access, I mean not gone to, because access she has, she chose not to. She just chose not to be part of the world because of who she's married to. And because she's now getting a first taste of that in her adulthood, she is excited, she's not afraid, she's doing this and the other. And again, this is very similar to all the white characters that we've seen. Whenever you have a movie where it's to do with Black culture and the white girl, it's always been a white girl, most cases are not, who's found herself with a Black boyfriend and things like that. And then they get to, they take her to the cookout, or they take her somewhere where it's a Black neighborhood. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, this and the other. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like a carefree attitude kind of thing, and it's very similar. Claire's character, I feel like she's very similar in that she exudes a typical white girl. That's why I was saying that she kind of like almost became like a white woman, because she's been around them for so long. She's adapted to their mannerisms, and that's who she's become, in this instant. But what I found interesting is the discussion where Irene has actually explained to Hugh when he asked, what do you think our fascination is? And he said it's about, exoticism, fantasizing, because you can't have Black people, and so when you have them around, you want to be a part of their lives, or you want to date them, not because you wholeheartedly desire them as a person who you've fallen for, but because it's something like a forbidden fruit. What do you think of that, Nana?
I think I kind of agree to a certain extent. There's been situations where I have heard people say, especially in Zambia or Africa, you find there these white men who come and date a certain type of Black women. So most of them, I heard a conversation where they're like, don't get excited about things like this. These people are just, like, they've heard like, or maybe Black or Africans or whatever, Zambians are wild in bed or something, you know what I mean? Like it's not about the individual per se. It's just about like, they look interesting and exotic. Like you said, what would I get? It's an experience. It's fun. Not to say that it's wrong, but then of course, from the other end, you'd want somebody to want you for you, like who you are, find you interesting, and not everything else, I think.
Right.
So I kind of agree with her to a certain extent. What do you think?
It's about, I honestly think that obviously there are people who find somebody that they're falling in love, from a particularly if we're talking about white people falling in love with Black people. That definitely does happen, but that normally stems from somebody who's actually knowledgeable of the Black culture, somebody who appreciates the Black culture, someone who understands the Black culture, someone who's not going to infringe upon the Black culture. And so much so that when they do meet someone who is Black, they actually get to see the person. They see the color, of course, but they get to also see the person, and that's the person they end up falling in love with. And so in the times like the 1920s, you will find that for the most part, because all this hate was already spewed out there anyways against Black people, for the most part, a lot of the white people who attended these soirees, and you saw even when they were having that discussion, there were some white men at the far end of the dance floor who were just like watching, almost like vultures, like, oh my gosh, almost salivating almost, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is not a zoo. You know what I mean? This is not a freaking zoo. This is not like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, it was so bizarre. It was honestly like a circus, basically watching the black people dance, you know, as though they're watching some kind of a circus, you know. And that's, for me, at the same time, I do feel sorry for them, because I think it's really sad that people should be kept in such a small box, such a narrow way of thinking, especially when it comes to another human being, you know, to the point where when they see they're so fascinated. What are you fascinated about? Apart from the skin color, guess what? They've got eyes and nose and mouth and teeth and hands just like you. There's nothing extraordinarily different about them than yourself, you know, apart from your ethnicity. But otherwise, when it comes to the human anatomy, you're literally the same. So it's the ignorance for me is what fascinates me more than anything. You know what I mean? The ignorance is what fascinates me more than anything. So yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. You know, and obviously in this particular situation, Claire is having the time of her life, but it ends up causing a slight rift between Irene and her husband, Brian, who is played by Andre Holland. Okay, it caused a slight rift to the point where I don't know if I want to call it jealousy, you know, but it's almost as though Claire was taking a lot of the attention from almost everybody, including the maid, to the point where at one point, if you remember, including the maid, at one point, she got home and they were there chilling in the backyard, right? You know, basking in the sun or whatever was going on.
Yeah.
And she's asking the maid, can you help me with these groceries? And the maid is like, yes. And she's staying there. And she's like, had to call her name like a couple of times more just for her to come do your job, you know?
Yeah.
So it's that sort of thing. It's like, come on, what's going on? To the point where when they were having, I think, discussions, with their children, you know, they were having discussion. I think, no, the dad was having a discussion with the son about someone that got lynched, and the mom was kind of against it, you know, and that led to them having to have a discussion about why don't they go somewhere, go on holiday somewhere. He's been talking, you know, she's been telling him about that. And she just ends up expressing herself to say, look, you seem to have a lack of interest on things when she's absent. When she's around, you're interested in doing all these things, but when she's gone, you're saying, oh, I'm not interested. You know, I can't be bothered. I can't be asked. And volumes, you know, it sounds it's like he got really excited every time she's around. He wants to do stuff, but the moment she's gone, he's like, can't be asked. You know, but obviously what ended up leading to that discussion is the following, and the following is literally a discussion on how this time Irene sees herself and her fears. You can see her fears about being a mixed race person, being a woman of color, you know, and how she wants to impart that information onto her children and how long she wants to wait. So they kind of have a discussion about that. And this is basically how it played out.
Do you look serious?
Talking about John Carter. The one that got lynched in Little Rock.
That again?
You gotta know about these things, Ma.
Do I?
You have any more nuts?
I'll see.
I want some too. You know they did more than just shoot him. They attached his body to a caravan, dragged it through the city.
Did you tell your father that?
He told me.
He did?
I'm old enough not to be spoken to like a child anymore.
I do wish you wouldn't keep talking to them about all that lynching stuff.
Why?
There'll be time enough for them to learn about horrible things when they're older. Right now, they're safe.
You are absolutely wrong. If you are determined to have them grow up in this damn country, the sooner they find out what they are up against, the better.
But they're happy. Why ruin that? I want them to stay happy.
Irene, what is the use in keeping things from them? We tried to keep them from hearing the word nigger.
Don't use those
and
words
what
in my
happened?
house.
They found out the hard way.
You are not to talk about the race problem, Brian. I won't have it.
It is my house, too, and I tell you, they need to know these
They
things.
don't! They do not!
I don't understand how someone as intelligent as you can be so stupid.
So yeah, that was a very touching conversation.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts when it comes to having to have discussions with your children about race, about what they are going to face when they get out there? Because I feel like at this day and age, especially, it is important that your children are aware what they are, going to be facing, what they likely might face. And by that, I mean not just racism from white people or other people of other ethnicities, because, Black people get it from all angles, but also prejudice, colorism from people of their own, cultural background, their own ethnicity, because there's lighter skinned Black people who still say really nasty, derogatory things towards darker skinned Black people. So at what age do you think would be the best time to tell your kids and tell them about race and tell them what they should expect out there in society when they go to school, when they go to play and stuff?
For me, I'm in agreement with the dad, because it's never too early. The way Irene is, she doesn't want her picture perfect life or image that she has created in her head ruined. And these kids you're not with them 24/7. You don't know what happens when they're at school or in the street or anything like that. And if something happens where they're not prepared, they don't understand, that could be very damaging to a child.
Right.
So I suggest as early as possible, you break it down in a language that they can understand. As they progress, you keep intensifying it. It's better they know. It's better they are aware that this is the situation. But just like there's I don't know if you saw this movie, The Hate You Give.
No, actually, you know what? I've been meaning to watch that. I'm yet to watch it.
Yeah, you should. It's a really
I'm yet
good
to watch
movie.
it, but it's interesting that you've actually mentioned that movie, but I'll put a pin in that and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, so the point of the whole thing was the parents were like overly trying to, protect, training them and all these things. And then there was a thin line between them and actually imparting hate in the children. It's one thing to educate and make them aware and all these things, but at the end of the day, do not form an opinion for them. Do not bring your hate, because they're likely to grow up in a different time that's more accepting, where people are more, maybe they interact more, they can date white people and things like that. White people can date Black people. So if you have built that anger in them, I don't think you're doing the right thing. So
no,
you're not helping them at all. It's make them aware and be objective about the situation, so that once, because the experiences will be different.
Right.
They just need to know, like, oh, this is what dad was talking about. This is whatever.
Right.
Let me handle it like this and that. Yeah. So I'm all for that. Just the right way. Don't be bitter and yeah.
Because I think the way I see it as well, like I am in agreement with the dad in the sense that it is important to actually educate your children at an early age, because it is from an early age that children are actually made to feel like, they don't belong, like they're different. If you've ever heard of and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, you've seen the doll test. Have you seen the doll? I think it's called the doll test, the doll exercise, I think doll test. Let me see if I can Google it really quickly. The doll test, yeah, I think it's called the doll test or the doll experiment, where they basically get a bunch of young people and they have to choose which doll, like they bring up like a bunch of dolls across in front of them or pictures, and they show them their different shades, right? There's the lightest one at the very end, and by light, like all the way to where they're white. And then they've got the darkest one at the other spectrum. And then they ask them questions like, which one is the bad one? They'll always point the darkest one. That's the bad one. Which one is the ugly one? They'll point the dark one. Which one is, which one is the mean one? They'll point at the dark one. Which one is, which one is the kind one? They'll point the light one, And so the fact that little children, I mean, these are tiny, tiny little children, that are having to actually make those choices. The fact that that's already in their mind, it says a lot about what society is feeding people and their minds into thinking. And that's why you find that a lot of Black people, sometimes they do struggle with identity because they don't feel accepted. And I feel like what is happening in passing, it is two individuals who are actually, you initially, you might think Claire is the only one struggling with her identity. But in fact, Irene too is struggling with her identity, in as much as she supposedly embraces her Blackness or, you know, being mixed race or whatever. You know, there's still a part of her that I feel might even resent it to a degree. You know, otherwise, why would she feel the need to go into this tea house and pass as white? Why would she want to, you know, spend a day here and there in New York City passing as a white woman? And on top of it all, she doesn't tell her husband that she does this. Her husband doesn't know that she does this. So that says a lot, because if it's something that she was not ashamed of, her husband would be in the know. Her husband would know exactly what it is that she is doing, you know, but he doesn't. Do you see what I mean? You know, he doesn't. And so it is an interesting discussion where if people are trying to, whenever people try to overly protect someone from finding out information too early, it's never really about informing that person and protecting that person. I feel it's more about them themselves protecting whatever, like you said, her little bubble in life that she's created. She's trying to protect that. She doesn't want to crack, you know, put a crack in what she's had already, but it's too late. You know, to the point where the son is like, yeah, but mom, we have to know these things. You know, we have to know these things.
Just
it's really
to
important. It's important.
Just to emphasize, I had an experience. I think I should have been 10 or 11. So I remember my cousins and those like two older people. So we're going to Charleston Market, which is close to where we lived, and we're window shopping. And then I've always been this person that likes, you know, I like to expose, and I'm just like a funky person. So we're in this boutique. We're not really buying anything, but like we're just looking at a couple of things. So I picked this top, and I've never forgotten this experience. I picked this top, and I'm looking at this top, and it's one of those, it was the era of barebacks. So then it was the ultimate bareback where it had those strings, like little small strings. So from a distance, you're literally, it's a real bareback.
It's like it's complete
and
bareback.
Then the shop, and I'm pretty dark, so I'm dark skinned and everything. So the shop, the lady in the shop was like, I'm not sure if you should get that because you're too dark. And then the people I was with laughed. So for me, I'm like, is there a problem with, you know what I mean? Is there a problem with me wanting this? And because I'm not understanding, but had somebody briefed me like, oh, this is the situation and blah, blah, blah. And comments like that came from family members, from people around, like, oh, you're too dark, or there's no powder as dark as you, or whatever. And then I went to a point where I began to bleach my skin. And the same people are now calling me out like FBI. And I'm like, what do you want from me? Like, what do you want from me? You're the people that put me under pressure. You made me believe that this ain't cute. You know what I mean? Because now you're forming your own opinions. Like, if they're coming at me like this, then it must not be cute. So you bleach and then you change. And then the same people again would tag you in posts of like, oh, FBI, blah, 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 blah. And you're like confused.
What's FBI?
Former Black individual. So again, they're bullying you for, you know what I mean? So now exactly, like it's a legit thing. So for me, I was confused and whatnot until I found myself and got comfortable again. When I found God and God ministered to me, like, no, that's not how I created you to be. I created you that way for a reason. Blah, 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 blah. So now I went back. So like, make it make sense. This, and it's coming from our own people. That's the thing. Your own circle, your own people. So the earlier we know, the better. Like for me,
the better.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Obviously, that kind of brings us to us making the transition to our next part of the discussion, which is colorism, racism, and, you know, where it stems from and why there's so much insecurity in terms of our skin tone, our skin color within the Black community, and also us, you know, having, you know, at one point there was the whole movement, team light skin, team dark skin, that sort of thing, which for me I thought was one of the most ridiculous things ever. It should have never existed in the first place. But before we do that, I just want to remind those people, if you're watching over from Facebook, please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. We need all the likes that we can be able to get, so give the video a thumbs up. And of course, if you are watching from the Global Zambian Magazine page, please do not forget to follow the page and tweak those notifications so that you can receive updates every time we upload a new video and every time we go live, just like we are right now. And of course, for those who are over on YouTube, if you are first time here coming onto our YouTube channel, do not forget to click on that subscribe button, of course the bell button, so that you can receive notifications every time we upload a new video. And of course, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. And of course, for those people who are watching over on Twitter, because today we're streaming slightly differently, we are actually streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, and over on Twitter as well. So if you are watching us over on Twitter, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up by clicking on that heart button, and of course retweet it so that more people can be able to watch. And of course, do not forget to follow our Twitter page for more news updates, because every time we upload new videos, we have got news updates from our website. They do go directly onto our Twitter account as well. And so as we move on to the next part of the discussion, obviously, we're going to talk about colorism. We're going to talk about how it all started. Obviously, a lot of people might not know, you know, at the time of slavery, and this has been a concurring thing where the lighter skinned slaves were the ones who were actually kept as the house slaves. And you had the dark ones, they're the ones who were actually kept in the field, you know. And I wrote a quote in my book where I basically said, you know, people need to realize that just because you are a house slave, okay, the lighter-skinned person, and the other person is a dark-skinned slave who's being kept outside, it doesn't really make you that much higher up than the person who is darker than you, because the simple matter is you are both still the property of the slave owner, right? Which kind of puts you all in the same position, because at any time he can decide to sell you both. If anything, the slave who is in the field was actually to a degree considered more valuable because of the cotton that they could pick. But I feel when it comes to colorism, I feel it stems from them. It stems from that period where, you know, Black slave, you know, enslaved women used to be sexually assaulted, and then they would bear children, and the children would end up light-skinned. And in most cases, those children would be taken away from them and raised by the master's wife in the house, you know. And that's why you find that there would be some other light-skinned slaves who, when they were free, would end up enslaving other slaves. It actually did happen. There were slaves who were former slaves who ended up having slaves. And so this is more a generational thing that's happened that has affected the mindset of the Black person, to the point where let's fast forward 100 years later. Okay, let's fast forward 100 years later to the Rwandan genocide. Okay, during the Rwandan genocide, before that happened, during the colonial days, the Belgians are the ones who colonized Rwanda, right? During their reign, they actually literally measured the Hutus and the Tutsis. Okay, there's another tribe which name I always forget, but they're a much smaller tribe. But they did measure individuals and measure their features to pick which ones were more, you know, worthy of being put in government, being put in leadership roles and things like that. Goodness. Yes, that's what caused the genocide. Because if I recall, who are being killed, I always confuse who was being killed. I think it's the Hutus were being killed, right? By the Tutsis,
I'm not
if
sure.
I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Tutsis and Hutus. Let me see. And they're under genocide during Rwanda war, during the period of the Tutsi minority ethnic group, as well as some moderate Hutu and Twa, were slaughtered by armed militias. And so generally, the Hutu and Tutsi strife stems from class warfare, you see, with the Tutsis perceived to have greater wealth and social status, as well as favoring cattle ranching over what is seen as the lower class farming of the Hutus. And so the Tutsis were the ones who were actually being killed, and the Hutus were the ones who were basically were considered as lower class. They were the ones who, again, like passing, where you had Tessa Thompson's character, Irene, she had more, Afrocentric features. That's what the Hutus were like. Whereas the Tutsis had similar features to Ruth Negga's character, Claire, where it was more slender, they were much taller, they were more prominent, that sort of thing. So they were selected to be in certain positions, so much so that by the time the genocide happened, which, by the way, was planned, it wasn't some random thing, because random things like that do not just happen, where 100 days, over 1 million people get slaughtered. That's something that cannot be random. That was definitely planned. And so by the time the genocide happened, it happened because of years and years and years of feeling oppressed, of feeling lesser than, where to the point where there was so much hatred towards the Tutsis by the Hutus, and the people that actually fueled that hatred were actually the same people who were in power, that manipulated the whole situation. Because to date, I still find it odd that the UN did not intervene that much. There was actually a person from the UN who spoke out and said it could have been prevented, but they chose to pull out their forces. So when we talk about ethnic cleansing, the genocide is literally one of the epitomes of it, amongst others that have happened within Africa. Not everything is as it seems, as Irene told Hugh, not everything is as it seems. And same goes for the Rwandan genocide. And so that was to do with classism, that was to do with the skin tones, where they were lighter in complexion, that sort of thing. So they ended up being hated by the Hutus. So that's why the Tutsis are the ones who are getting killed. So all that is as a result of constant manipulation by people who absolutely despise Black people, who absolutely hate Black people. And so if you spend so much time and your resources manipulating cultures, a certain, ethnic background, manipulating them for so many centuries, of course there's going to be issues when it comes to self-esteem. Of course there's going to be issues when it comes to people accepting their own skin color. There's going to be issues when it comes to the people actually trusting each other, because what is the best way to win a war? Divide and conquer. And that's literally what they've done to the Black community. That's literally what they've done to the Black community, divide and conquer. And they've done that by manipulating the mindset into making a lot of Black people thinking they are incapable of doing anything without the help of a white person, and that if another Black person was to get involved, they are likely to be their downfall. That's your enemy. They're going to be jealous of you. But why? We're the same. Hey ABs, hi, welcome to the live. We're currently discussing Netflix passing film. It is a spoiler review, so if you haven't watched it, so I don't know if you're okay with spoilers, go ahead and watch it first, and then you can come back to this. But we've now gone past, though, the part of the film where we have discussed most of it. There's still a slight part we're still yet to discuss, which is the ending bit. Okay, that was a result of all the events that kind of happened in the movie. But yeah, that's where I feel like colorism kind of stems from. And in as much as people talk about inclusivity, even today, they're putting more Black roles, more Black people. I'm like, are you sure? Take a closer look. More Black men maybe are being given roles, but the Black woman is still getting left out, because a lot of the roles in movies that could have possibly been cast as an actual Black woman were actually given to a mixed race woman. And this is where the colorism comes in place, where when we talk about light skin privilege, the same way we talk about white privilege, there is such a thing as light skin privilege. It does exist, where where basically a mixed race person or a lighter skinned Black person is considered to basically be the acceptable version of a Black woman. And Zendaya did actually say something in an interview, let me see if I can find the interview really quickly. So basically what Zendaya actually said, and obviously I don't want people to misquote it, because if you kind of do quote unquote, it will seem like she's being very condescending. But she did say, I'm Hollywood's acceptable version of a Black girl, and that has to change. We are vastly too beautiful and too interesting for me to be the only representation of that. So that was Zendaya's conversation with Badass Boss at the BeautyCon in New York, when she was, talking. She was giving a speech at BeautyCon New York, where she kind of expressed that. And it's really sad that it should have to take, again, just for us to be heard, it should have to take somebody who is not a black woman to say, hey, we're this. But when a black woman says it, oh, why is she being so aggressive? Why is she being so defensive? You know, that's literally the outcome of us trying to express, to say we're not being included. And now going back to what you mentioned, oh, you asked me, have you seen The Hate You Give? Okay. The Hate You Give, I have heard about it, but I haven't actually had a chance to watch it. Obviously it's starring Amanda Steinberg, who, anybody remembers who she is? She was the cute little button-nosed girl in Hunger Games, the first part of Hunger Games, and she's now all grown up.
She's the one in Colombiana.
She's in Colombiana as well. Yes, she plays the little girl in Colombiana. She plays the young version of Zoe Saldana, you know. And so basically there was a lot of backlash about that particular movie, The Hate You Give, because the person who actually wrote The Hate You Give is a Black person who wrote about the experiences of a little Black chocolate girl, not a caramel girl, but a Black chocolate girl. And so for them to go and cast Amanda Steinberg in that role, it was a massive question mark to like, excuse me, there are other young Black girls in Hollywood that you can actually pick to play the role, who've got the hair, you know, the proper Afro hair and all the experiences. Because in as much as I don't want to remove the experience of the mixed race person, we also have to call a spade. And that's why I stand for people being able to categorize a mixed race person as a mixed race person. And the reason why I say this, I feel like if you try to categorize them as Black or categorize them as white, you're basically forcing these people to choose half of who they are. And I don't think that's fair. You know, and I honestly do not think that's fair. If I was to say marry a white man today and I had a mixed race child, I want my child to identify themselves as mixed race. I don't want them to identify 100% as Black, because what ends up happening is when they try to identify as Black and they're amongst Black people all the time, to a degree, they'll get all this pushback to say, but you're not really fully us. You're not fully Black, understand, you know? And then when they're amongst the white people, they get pushback there. Actually, not really one of us. You're a bit darker, you know, you're a bit this than the other. You see what I mean? So why not allow them to actually be mixed race? That way you're not forcing this person and, quite frankly, causing a level of psychological damage, forcing this person to actually deny a half of who they are, you know? And I feel like that's what the biggest problems there is out there, particularly in Hollywood, where they want to say, oh yeah, I'm Black. No, you're not. You're mixed race. It's fine. It's actually okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Be mixed race. That way you can embrace both cultures and you can be able to grow up and raise your own kids to understand that you're a bit of both. Why should you have to choose? And the worst part is I've hardly ever seen a half Chinese, half white person being made to feel that they have to choose.
Yeah.
I've never seen
always just have that balance.
I've never seen a half white, half Indian person being always made to feel that they have to choose. I've always seen them embracing both cultures. You know, so I don't understand why it has to be any different when Black people are involved, which again speaks volumes about the psychological damage that's happened to the Black race in the years. And Passing is a perfect display of that. When you look at the
one thing I've noticed, I'll speak for Zambia, because that's the only place I've seen this. Mixed race people do identify as mixed race.
Yes.
And there's this thing where, obviously it's not everyone, but there's this thing where they think they're better than the Black people. And then they try to aspire to be white. There are some who literally feel like they're white. But when they go to the white people, the white folk are like, no, you ain't. You know what I mean? So they struggle. Again, there's a big struggle with their identity. But most of them, the ones that are solid and comfortable in the mixed raceness and whatever, and feel like, oh, we're better than the Black people. And they'd rather not even associate. They would rather not even associate with the Black people to a certain degree. And I'm just like, really? Seriously?
I have actually seen that. I have actually witnessed that. I have seen it. I know that areas like Thorn Park, once upon a time, I don't know what it's like now. Once upon a time was like literally the mixed race. I'm not going to use the other word of how they refer to it in Zambia, because it's offensive to places like the UK and America. But like it was considered like the mixed race quarters, Thorne Park. I don't know if it's still that way, but like,
I
remember.
It's still that way. But most of them not doing so well. So it's not like
Thorne Park is not a high end. No, it is considered the mixed race quarters, but it's not for the high end mixed race people. That I do know for a fact. That I do know for a fact. But that's where the majority of them do tend to live. And again, I have witnessed this, and it's quite fascinating because you find that even with the fact that they might be lower class income homes, because of their skin tone. Even if you're out there driving a Benz and a Mercedes, you're making it rain. That person from Thorne Park who doesn't have a car, maybe they might not even have a job, will still look down on you.
Yeah.
Simply because they're looking at their own skin and go, I'm better than you because I'm lighter. I'm more beautiful because I'm lighter, And I feel like there is a lot of colorism that happens in Zambia as well, a lot. Like you said, the way your friends laughed at you and they tell you you're too dark. Who even, told you that? That's why things like Jaribu, all those things became very popular.
Exactly.
I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I personally did not notice this. I'll be very honest. I never noticed this because I never really spent time looking at myself in the mirror or anything like that. But a friend of mine at the time literally was asking me what I was using. And I was like, what? Because at first I was like, using what? She's like, what are you using? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, what are you using? Your skin is so much lighter. And I was like, what? I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm pregnant. Are you actually asking me what I'm using? Because my pregnancy has maybe made me go a little bit lighter in complexion, to which it's going to revert back to its normal complexion after the fact, And for me, that says a lot, where you see people who are so uncomfortable in their darkness. They'll do anything, to the point where they're using all these lightening creams that actually are very damaging to the body. They're damaging to your organs. And it's just crazy. It's honestly really, really crazy. And I think like passing does allow us to actually open up about the discussion on colorism, because I feel like racism is talked about a lot, but colorism isn't. Light skin privilege isn't spoken about enough. And I feel like when it comes to our white counterparts, they don't seem to understand it either. They hardly understand racism, even if they're the ones actually
they can't get it. It's like so when we they created this
they created it, and these are the consequences. Now we're having to pick up the pieces. We're having to suffer the consequences. Our children and our children's children are having to suffer the consequences of not being selected for a role because there's a lighter skinned person who might not even be as talented as them, but they'll be picked just for the sake of aesthetics. And again, people, oh no, but the black person, though, they won't sell. No, they won't sell because you keep saying it. They won't sell because you keep saying it. Do you see what I mean? If you're going to keep saying, nah, this won't sell, this, of course it's not going to sell, because that's the message you keep putting out there. If you put something out there long enough, people start to believe it, no? There's a reason why there's been so many people who have fraudulently displayed themselves to be who they are not, and society has believed them. Why? They've put out a certain message over and over and over again, and people have actually believed them, and so I feel like that's kind of like the situation. And it's sad, it's a sad reality, but that's literally how it is.
What it is,
that's literally how it is. And I think in order for me, my stance, in order for us to change the narrative and to make people more accepting of the darker skinned black woman and the actual black woman, as opposed to pick a mixed race person to play a black person. And I'm talking about in movies and TV shows where you see a black parent, black mom, black dad, they're clearly black. They've got thick, proper 4C hair. And yet their child somehow miraculously ended up mixed race. I'm thinking, how did this
That's happen? Exactly what happened in The Hate You Give. I'm like, okay. And then the siblings are black.
They're all black. But that's because it's the main character. They said, let the main character be mixed race so that it can sell. You see what I mean? And that's a problem. That's a problem and needs to be stopped. And I feel like the way a lot of black people can stop this kind of narrative is we start to tell our own stories. When I conducted the interview with Hakim Kai Kazem, which you can find, by the way, in issue 3 of the Global Zambian magazine, he talks a lot about Black stories, and he talks a lot about Black history, how a lot of our history, such as stories of us being pirates, you know, and history books making it look like only white people were ever pirates. Similar to the way The Harder They Fall, the recent movie that came out on Netflix as well, starring Idris Elba and Jonathan Majors, you know, and Regina Hall, you know, starring them, where it's Black cowboys were actually in existence back in the day, you know. So all those stories are swept under the rugs, you know, all the way to people don't know that Black Tudors actually existed. We were everywhere, you know. So it is up to us to tell our stories. And Hakim Kazim basically said something that's always stuck with me. Is like, if we want our stories to be told, we need to be able to tell it ourselves. We shouldn't be able to expect other people to tell our stories for us, because if we're going to rely on that, we are going to keep getting a misrepresentation, you know, a misrepresentation where basically other parts of society who don't know the Black experience, right, will actually think, oh, this must be it, because not everyone is media smart to want to do the research for themselves. So how you put the stories out there, because the media is a powerful tool. So let's use that, create our own stories, create our own platforms where we don't have to, you know, rely on an old white man who has hardly ever even shaken hands with a Black person to make a decision on how a Black character should be portrayed in a film or a TV show. You know, it's up to us. You know, we need to be the change that we need to see. So that's kind of like how I feel about that. Before we kind of like close off, Nana, what have you got any final thoughts, comments?
All in all, I love the movie. Like I said before, I love the unspokenness about it. Are you gonna play the last clip, by the way, or should I just go?
Did I play? I think I did already. No. Yes, I did play the last clip. We're gonna talk about the last bit of it. What happened?
Okay. All right. Okay, then let's talk about the last bit, and because I was about to.
You're like, where's the last clip?
I was about to spit it out. So
spit it out. Okay, so basically,
because I was a bit confused there still.
Right. Obviously, as the film kind of goes on, obviously, Claire and Irene, their lives are kind of intertwined. They're spending a lot of time together, and then I think towards like the last quarter of the film, Irene is walking in the town with one of her Black friends, and as she's walking, who comes in front of her on the paving? Rather than, lo and behold, it is Claire's husband. Okay, Claire's husband, who is John, played by Alexander Skarsgård. He's like, hi, you know, hi, Mrs. Redfield, you know, hi, Mrs. Redfield. And he puts his hand out to shake her. But because, remember, she was fuming, even if she laughed at the time, she was absolutely livid about the things that he said. You know,
her laugh wasn't even like a laugh.
It wasn't her laugh. It was just hysterical because she didn't know what to do with herself.
Yeah.
To the point where she literally just looked at him. You know, she looked at him and she grabbed her friend. And it's only when he looked over to the friend and realized that she's with a Black woman. And I think that's when it kind of clicked. Like, wait a minute, what? And I think he started putting two and two together, where he's like, wait, didn't she say that they're old school friends? How did they manage to get to school together if she's white and this other woman is Black?
Yeah.
And so obviously by now, they're having one of their usual soirees, you know, having a good time, and all their people are invited. And Claire is there having a good time as usual. But this time she is slightly different, if you notice, you know. She's kind of like seems to have let go of her inhibition a little bit more than usual. And all of a sudden you hear people in the background shouting, you know, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what on earth is actually going on here? And we see someone, let go of me. And then next thing you know, in the scene, you actually see the husband kind of pop up. You know, the cameras kind of pan to where the commotion is coming from. And it's the husband, and people are trying to stop him from coming through. And it's like, let go of me. And then the wife, she kind of heard him already. So she's already standing somewhere near where Irene is. And she's looking out to the commotion that he's causing. And as soon as he sees her, he lunges towards her. He's like, you liar. What did he say? You crazy liar, something like that. I don't know if he cursed as well. I can't remember.
But she was so calm, yeah.
Yeah, and she was just there, standing there calmly, just looking at him. And everyone's kind of like staring at him, watching him almost coming towards this woman. And he's there pointing and shouting and jeering at her. And then he's trying to lunge towards her. As he's trying to lunge towards her, Irene sees what he's about to do. So Irene, and this is where it's like, oh, who really did it? Irene puts her hand around her. If you notice, Irene grabbed her by the waist to try and push her out of the way. But in so doing, I think she inadvertently pushed her out because the window was wide open. And so now everyone is confused because anyone that's looking at it from a different angle, it almost looks like the husband might have pushed her, but he actually didn't reach her. He actually didn't reach her. And I think she must have maybe taken a wrong step as, you know, Irene tried to pull her out of the way from the husband. And then she literally fell down because they were like a couple of stories up, right? The building. She fell out the window, and it was a beautiful
So she was not pushed?
She wasn't pushed, no.
Because I remember seeing her put her hand on her stomach like this.
Yes, to push her out the way.
This.
Yes.
But then pushing her out of the way would pull her out of the way, isn't it?
So do you think she pushed her?
That's what it looked like. If you watch the clip,
I don't know. I mean, we might have to watch it again, but I mean, it is down to speculation at this point where we have to maybe, I might watch it back and slow down the time.
But then it wouldn't make sense. Like, why would you push her? Yeah, like that's where I was confused.
Because for me, I did think about that. I was like, did she do it on purpose, knowing that she could fall out the window? And I thought, could it be that maybe she did have some resentment for all the attention that she was getting? And if you remember, at some point, because she was getting all this attention, at some point, it's like Irene was almost having a panic attack to the point where she dropped a teacup, right? And then what's the gentleman's name? Hugh ended up covering for her and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I bumped into you a little bit too hard, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But otherwise, she was like so livid, like, oh, she was angry, I think. And she ended up dropping that. So I'm in two minds into thinking, did she actually push her on purpose?
I think she didn't do it on purpose. She didn't do it on purpose, but she somehow, you know what I mean, didn't really feel bad, like,
about it.
Like so long.
Because it's almost as though when it happened, she just stood there. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, go downstairs. Everyone kind of ran downstairs. And she was just like,
yeah.
And then it took her a minute. It's only when she got down there, I think she realized the gravity of the situation. And that's when she was like, oh my gosh, she was almost even throwing up, if you remember. And what made me think that there's a tiny percent chance that, okay, the husband thinks she might have done it on purpose is when he hugs her, he says, I love you. You know, and there's something about the look on his face where he's like, hang on, what just happened? Because he was trying to say the husband did it. If you remember, he actually told the police the husband actually might have done it. And then the police were asking everybody saying, who did it? Like, what exactly happened? Did the husband push her? You know? And as soon as Irene said, no, she missed a step and she fell, everybody else started using the same narrative to the police. And the police are like, okay, we thought so. We thought as much. You know, basically for them saying that is basically saying there's no way a white man would have done this. Because had it been a black person, it would have been a whole different story. You know, it would have been a whole different story. Right. You know, and then in the end, you basically see the husband sitting down by the paving, regretting his actions, because he might have been angry, but he still loved her. You can't switch off love like that. He still loved her. And she was lying there dead in a poof of snow. And that's literally how the movie ends. Like, you know, it had a very interesting beginning and a very interesting ending, because the beginning was kind of blurry and you just hear voices, you know, as you're kind of like, you were led into kind of discovering who these characters are. And in the end, it kind of fades away in a similar way. But the difference is we've lost one of these characters that we've gotten to know. And my thinking is, okay, I get the gist of the story, colorism, racism, want you to pass as white so that you can be able to have the same privilege as white people. But at the same time, is it also saying the moral of the story, do not pass as white? The moral of the story is, if you are in a society that actually hates you, you can't try and pretend to be like them, because at some point or another, they're going to come against you. Do you think that's the situation? Do you think that's the situation?
Repeat the question that you posed.
I was saying that in this kind of situation, is it saying that the moral of the story is that if you find yourself in an environment where basically you're amongst people, or you're amongst a country, a town, a place where you are very much hated, it's not a good idea to try and over immerse yourself in it, in the sense that it never ends well, because their true colors will always come. As much as you think they've accepted you, they're still going to reject you at some point.
In regards to Claire?
Yes. In regards to Claire, in regards to us as individuals, us as Black people.
In Claire's situation, I feel like she should have just, of course, I understand the time and everything, but it wasn't going to end well at any point, because you could see she's having so much fun in that, in her newfound life and everything, and there's still this lingering thing over her head, is you are living a lie. And for how long are you going to keep up with this lie and things like that? It was bound to happen. And the way her husband described Black people, he hated them with a passion. And what did you think was going to happen if he found out? You know what I mean? So yeah, so for me, I feel like she really shouldn't have been. I get her being there and having all that fun, but she really shouldn't have been in that place, because it was never really gonna.
Yeah, she chose the path to pass as wife, and she should have just stuck it out as is. Because that's a big risk. Because what's happened is now the little child, let's not forget, they do have a child. Even if we never get to see the child, you know, they do have a child together, and the child has been left motherless. And this is a child who is now a quarter mixed race, who in time might become more olive skin, right? Where she might be identified as like, hang on a minute, you don't seem like you're fully white, you know? And then how do you raise a child in that kind of environment where there's so much hate towards Black people? You know what I mean? Like, what would the dad do, knowing that, oh my gosh, my child is actually a quarter mixed race, you know, or a quarter Black, you know, in his eyes.
How would he feel about his own child?
Yes,
those are all.
Because he hates them so much, but his own blood now is a part of that. Like, how, you know what I mean? It's very interesting. But overall, this the cinematography was great. I enjoyed the way they made it black and white, so that we can be able to see things for what they really are, which is black and white. Okay, so that's very important, because I feel like it had a double meaning on that, you know, in the sense that it was shot in black and white because it looked absolutely beautiful, but also I think there was a double meaning in the sense that the black and white allowed us to actually see the black and white, you know. It allowed us to see the black and white and understand the story of it all. Yeah, you know. But obviously we've gone on for quite a bit. I didn't actually expect that we're gonna be discussing it for this long. I actually thought we're going to discuss it for only a few minutes, move on to the whole, you know, race, identity, colorism thing, you know, that's going on. But we've gone on for quite a bit, to the point where I don't think we're going to take in any call-ins, you know. There's no point at this time. We are almost clocking 20 minutes, and I think I'm going to try and see if I can end it almost at the 20-minute mark. Have you got any last remarks, Nana?
I'm glad the movie has been put out, and it was necessary. It really was. I can understand it's not for a lot of people.
Yes,
because it's too quiet. So you really have to pay attention, and if you're all over the place, you miss certain points, because most of it is with the emotions and
it's very emotions and dialogue.
Yeah, and I love how they were able to portray that. So if you don't know how to read energies and emotions, then you're probably not going to get it.
You're going to struggle. No, you're really going to struggle. Yeah.
You're really going to struggle. But I love that it's out there, and focusing on the colorism part, because that is an issue as well.
It's a subject that's not talked about enough. It's a subject that is not spoken about enough, you know, because people think that society today thinks just because they've seen mixed race women portraying Black women on screen, they're like, oh, what are you talking about? You've been included. No, we haven't. We're still being left out. We're still here. We're still being left out. you know. And so I think that there needs to be more discussions about it. There need to be more awareness about what it means when people talk about colorism, you know, how it's basically where actual black women or darker skinned black women are marginalized, even within our own community. That's what colorism is about, you know, where they are selected. I remember working for a record label who basically, and I remember feeling so disgusted that I was working for these people. They were choosing music videos, video girls for their music videos. And during the process of selecting the girls, they were like, oh, make sure that they're all mixed race or light skin or white. And I'm looking at this guy who was my boss at the time. I'm looking at him. He's originally from the Gambia and he's very dark skinned, like he's super dark skinned, you know, dark skin. And I'm looking at him knowing very well he's got a daughter who's got his complexion, by the way, you know? And I'm thinking to myself, your daughter is going to grow up to be a woman who wants to do things out there in the world. How do you think she's going to feel knowing that people are actually saying this type of things when she's trying to maybe apply for a job or audition for something? And they're saying to her, no, don't pick that one. She's too dark skinned. And you're sitting there thinking, oh, this sells. No. And because I feel like people who do that sort of thing do not have the right to complain about colorism, because you yourself has gone with it. You've pushed that agenda forward. You know, you've pushed that agenda forward. And so what does that make you? You know, so I remember feeling so disgusted. I remember from that day onwards, even if I still talk to him today, I lost all respect for him. I lost respect for him and his family. I was just like, nah, if this is who you are, you clearly have got some self-hate, because if you think it's acceptable to still to go with the norm because that's what society is selling, like you're basically putting money before your rights as a black person. Yeah. And so when you see it happening to your own child, you can't turn around and complain about it, because guess what? You are one of the catalysts of this, you know? So yeah. So my thing is, honestly, black people, stay strong, love yourself. No matter your skin tone, you know, God created you the way you are for a reason, you know, not so that you can conform.
You made no mistake.
You're not, you know. And as for black creators out there, movie makers, filmmakers, television creators, you know, it is important that you understand that you can create your own product. You know, we have to be the change that we want to see. So we need to be able to create our own stories and tell our own stories. That way we can be able to put out the narrative the way it needs to be told, and not where it's reducted. Our Black history is reducted in a major way. And it's time that we actually are able to put our voices out there and really showcase what the Black experience is really all about. So yes, those are my final thoughts. So otherwise, Nana, anything else? You good to go?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
You're good to go. Yeah. All right. So before we obviously clock out for the weekend, for those who are watching over on YouTube, please do not forget to subscribe. Click on that subscribe button if you're new to our channel. What are you waiting for if you haven't yet? And of course, click on that bell button so that you can receive notifications every time we upload a new video. And of course, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, because we very much need all the thumbs up that we can get. It helps us out majorly in the algorithm. And of course, if you're watching us over on Facebook, please do not forget to click on that like button on the video. And of course, do not forget to follow the page and tweak those notifications so that you can receive updates as soon as we upload new content, we go live. And of course, every time we upload a brand new video just for you. And of course, those of you who are watching us over on Twitter, because today we are also streaming live across Twitter as well, do not forget to retweet this video. And of course, give us a little tap on that heart so that we can get as many hearts as we need. And of course, share it to your friends. Let them know about this. Get into the discussions. Leave it in the comments. We'll very much appreciate that. Otherwise, from myself and the beautiful Nana, we wish you an absolutely beautiful weekend. Until next week, where we'll be coming back to discuss everything that was the Divorce Club. And we've got some prizes in place that we're going to be giving out to you. And we're going to be giving those out to people who are actually going to call in. Okay, if you're going to call in, we've got some prizes just for you. So that will be next week, Thursday, possibly at 8:30 p.m. Central African time, which technically will be 6:30 p.m. Greenwich Meridian time. Okay. Otherwise, stay tuned, stay safe, have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Goodbye now.
Bye.
You are watching TGZ TV.
The Global Zambian, the only magazine that celebrates quality, cross-culture lifestyle and entertainment.